back to Neutralizing COVID, the monoclonal antibody story, the podcast where we unpack the science, strategy, and real world impact of monoclonal antibodies in the fight against COVID 19. I'm your host, Dr. Shikha Agrawal, and in this episode, we are focusing on vulnerable groups who often get overlooked. Let's dive into monoclonal antibodies in pediatric and high risk populations in context of safety and access. To walk us through the science and challenges, back on the mic is Dr. Aiswarya Chaudhuri, an expert voice in drug delivery and nanomedicine. Welcome and thanks for being here.
Feels great to reconnect. Thanks for inviting me again, Dr. Shikha. This is a critical topic, one that often gets overlooked when we talk about the antibody therapies.
To start, could you explain how the pediatric population differs from adults in terms of COVID 19 risk and the clinical use of monoclonal antibodies?
Children as a group generally have milder COVID-19 outbreaks or outcomes than adults, but that doesn't mean they are risk-free. Some children, especially those with underlying health conditions like congenital heart disease, asthma, obesity, or immunodeficiency, are at higher risk of severe illness. For these high-risk pediatric patients, monoclonal antibodies have been explored as both treatment and, in some cases, preventive therapy. However, use in children tends to be more restricted and carefully evaluated than in adults due to differences in immune development, metabolism, and the body weight.
Very well explained. Have monoclonal antibodies been approved or authorized for pediatric use?
Yes, several monoclonal antibody products received emergency use authorization, that is EUA, during the pandemic for children above certain age and weight thresholds, particularly those considered high risk. For example, some monoclonal antibodies were authorized for children 12 years and older who weighed at least 40 kilograms. These decisions were made based on the available adult data and adjusted for the pediatric safety considerations. In many cases, dosing was weight based, and the studies were designed to ensure the safety profile remain accepted for the younger patients.
What does the current evidence tell us about the safety profile of monoclonal antibody therapies in pediatric patients?
So far, the safety data have been very reassuring. Clinical trials and post-use monitoring have shown that adverse effects in pediatric patients are rare and generally mild. Most commonly, reactions at the injection site or mild allergic responses. But it's important to say monoclonal antibody use in children have been limited compared to adults, so the data pool is also smaller. That's why ongoing surveillance and studies are essential when extending these treatments to the younger population.
Okay, let's talk about access. Even when a monoclonal antibody is authorized, is it readily available to high risk kids?
Access has been a major challenge. Many pediatric patients, even those eligible, didn't receive monoclonal antibody therapy during waves of high transmission. There are several reasons for that. That are basically the limited supply, distribution prioritizing adult patients, lack of awareness among providers, and hesitancy around the pediatric use. In addition, some healthcare settings were not equipped to administer intravenous or subcutaneous antibody therapies in children. So even when the treatment was approved, practical access didn't always follow.
Really insightful, Dr. Aishwarya. My next question is, outside of pediatrics, what other high risk groups face challenges with monoclonal antibody access?
There are several, like patients with multiple comorbidities, people living in rural or under-reserved areas, those with limited mobility, or individuals with condition that makes them ineligible for vaccines or unable to respond to them. Even though these groups are often the most in need of passive protection, systemic barriers like cost, supply chain distribution disruptions, or lack of nearby infusion centers can limit their access to monoclonal antibodies.
Are there any developments aimed at improving that access?
Yes, one promising direction is the development of long-acting antibodies that can be given as single-dose intramuscular injections, which doesn't require any infusion centers. This simplifies delivery and expands reach. There's also an effort to create broader spectrum antibodies that work against multiple variants, reducing the need for constant product changes and regulatory reviews. These developments could help maintain consistent protection for high risk populations.
Before we wrap up, what's your take on the future of monoclonal antibodies in pediatrics and high risk care?
The future is hopeful but requires commitment. We need more pediatric specific data, better logistics for equitable delivery, and public health planning that includes a high risk group from the start, not as an afterthought. Monoclonal antibodies remain one of the few tools that can offer immediate, targeted protection, especially for people who can't rely on vaccines alone, ensuring they reach those who need them the most in both a medical and ethical priority.
That's a powerful point. Thank you, Dr. Aishwarya, for helping us unpack the complexities and the promise of monoclonal antibody use in vulnerable populations.
Thanks for having me. These are the kinds of conversation that move the science forward and keep patients at the center.
Well, that's it for this episode of Neutralizing COVID, the monoclonal antibody story. Huge thanks to all of you for listening in. Be the part of conversation. Subscribe today and share this episode if you found it valuable. Until next time, take care and keep exploring science.